Friends, hello. While reading Memoirs of Soviet frontline pilots and test crews, I repeatedly came across strange and unsettling mentions of one particular aircraft being shot down by its own side. At first, these stories sounded like exaggerations born from the chaos of war, but the more sources I compared, the clearer it became that this was a real and recurring problem. Today, we are talking about the Soviet long-range bomber Er-2 and why this aircraft so often became a victim of friendly fire. The Er-2 entered service at one of the most difficult moments in Soviet aviation history. It was a modern and ambitious bomber designed under the leadership of Vladimir Yermolayev, and it differed sharply from most aircraft already familiar to pilots, air defense units, and fighter regiments. It had an unusual silhouette, a distinctive inverted gull wing, a largely glazed cockpit, and twin vertical tail surfaces. On paper, it was a capable machine, but in real combat conditions, these very features would turn it into a deadly trap for its own crews. Documented cases of friendly fire involving the Er-2 appear already in the early months of its combat use. During night operations, bombers taking off from airfields near Moscow were sometimes fired upon by Soviet anti-aircraft batteries almost immediately after departure. In several cases, aircraft were damaged and forced to land, and some never returned. Even during major operations, such as the early raids on German targets deep in enemy territory, Er-2 crews reported being attacked by Soviet fighters, despite using recognition signals, including green flares and prearranged flight paths. One of the most tragic patterns occurred during return flights. After long missions, often at dawn or in poor weather, Er-2 bombers approaching their own territory were mistaken for enemy aircraft and intercepted by Soviet fighters. There are confirmed cases where I-16 and I-153 pilots opened fire at close range, convinced they were engaging German bombers. In several incidents, Er-2 crews had no chance to escape. Aircraft were set on fire, crew members were killed, and survivors had to bail out just a few dozen kilometers from their home airfields. Why did this happen so often? The first reason was simple but critical. The Er-2 was relatively rare. It never became a truly mass aircraft, and many fighter pilots and air defense crews simply did not recognize it instantly. Training materials existed, silhouettes were published, but in real combat, at night, in clouds, or under stress, recognition was far from perfect. A pilot seeing an unfamiliar shape had only seconds to decide whether it was friend or foe. The second reason was the aircraft's appearance. The inverted gull wing confused even experienced pilots. At certain angles, especially from below or from the side, the Er-2 could resemble German bombers. Its extensive glazing also played a role, as fully glazed cockpits were more commonly associated with enemy aircraft in the minds of Soviet airmen at that stage of the war. The third factor was organizational chaos. In the early period of the war, coordination between bomber units, fighter aviation, and air defense was often poor. Different branches reported to different commands. Flight schedules were not always shared properly, and not every unit was informed about new or uncommon aircraft operating in the same airspace. Even clear identification signals sometimes failed, either because they were not noticed in time or because the attacking side simply did not trust them. Finally, there was the psychological factor. Soviet pilots and gunners were under constant pressure, expecting enemy raids at any moment. Fatigue, fear, and the habit of reacting instantly to any suspicious aircraft often led to tragic mistakes. One fighter pilot later admitted in his memoirs that the Er-2 was almost unknown to them, and its strange shape triggered immediate suspicion. In war, hesitation could be fatal, and many chose to fire first. As we can see, even recognition signals and experience did not always save Er-2 crews from friendly fire. The aircraft was not flawed in a technical sense, but it was introduced into a system that was not ready to fully understand or protect it. The Er-2 became a victim of its rarity, its unusual design, and the brutal reality of early wartime aviation. So what do you think? Were there other reasons that forced Soviet pilots to attack their own aircraft? Was this problem avoidable, or was it simply an inevitable result of chaos, stress, and rapid wartime expansion? Write your thoughts in the comments.